words upon my tongue.
You will never be the same.
And with the full catastrophe, he didn't mean it was all bad.
God that I worship has a way of saying, don't play with me.
I invite you to the dance with the Lord of the dance.
God didn't call America to do what she's doing in the world now.
Please dance.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Untitled, the joint podcast video effort thing between Unfailing Love Church and Unfinished Community. I'm Pastor Tim.
I'm Pastor Mallory.
And this handsome guy to my left or right, I don't know which way you have me.
Sorry, we're talking about me?
Yeah.
That is an adjective that has never once been used in association with me, but I will take it. I still happen to be, despite all efforts to the contrary, I am Pastor Don.
There you go.
Title cards. It's a whole thing. But thanks again for joining with us as we down or up or wherever you have us. I've seen it where you have one of us up and one of us down. It's fine.
On the screen somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere in the random place that is this video recording. But thanks again for joining us as we dig into the Bible, make weird jokes throughout the entire podcast, and then try to, give you some meaning at the end of it all.
Try being the operative word.
Yeah. You get us together in a room, a Zoom.
If the three of us can't provide meaning, at least we will provide you with random jokes for 20 minutes or so to keep you busy.
Random dancing.
You're gonna get us taken down. They're gonna sue us for that. But yeah, I guess we just kind of move forward, from that. But this week, we are talking about Matthew 26 verses 6 through 13, the anointing at Bethany, which I honestly love this whole passage of the Bible. I don't know about y'all too, but I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
You look more like a human to me, but whatever.
There you go. All of your images fulfilled now.
I don't know. Now my brain's on a wacky waving inflatable arm.
That's where I went. That's exactly where I went.
They run on fans, so it's like down there somewhere. It's fine.
No, we don't.
We don't create that image.
We definitely don't point below the line of the screen and say it's down there somewhere, because that's not great on a religious video. Just gonna lay it out there.
We don't talk about the down there somewhere.
We don't talk about under the black bar.
If all you've got below the waist is a giant fan, that's more than I need to know about what you can get up to.
I will neither confirm nor deny that it's a giant.
Do you want to go ahead and read the verses before we go too?
Look, God created us all unique, and we're all blessed and wonderful and loved exactly as we are, whether we're male, female, non-binary, trans, gay, straight, or just a giant fan below the waist.
That's it. That's the podcast. We're done.
I'm done.
We're done.
See you next week.
You see, this is what happens when we try to record 2 episodes at a stretch, y'all. In case you're wondering, we get
full
super
disclosure.
loopy.
This is episode 2 of the night. Like, obviously, we haven't changed. Like, it's close.
Yeah. If you've been watching this far and you don't realize that we record multiple episodes at a stretch, you really haven't been paying enough attention.
Yeah, I think.
Admittedly, as a pastor, I can say is a common concern whenever I start talking about the Bible. So,
That's fair.
let's get to Mark chapter 26. Wait, no, Matthew chapter 26.
Call back.
Carry over the mistake of the last one. Matthew chapter 26, verses 6 through 13. Let's begin. The anointing at Bethany. Now, while Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. When the disciples saw it, they were angry and said, "Why this waste? For this ointment could have been sold for a large sum, and the money given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service for me. You always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her." Now, first thing I'm going to say, I know in reading this that this is like a really sacred interaction between this woman and Jesus. Like this is like a real holy moment for her. Jesus received it as such, but I've never been able to read this passage without imagining her dunking this like a Gatorade canister over the back of the man's head.
As soon as you said it, my first thought was rude.
Also, never a good enough reason to use the word ointment.
You smell like ointment and pee.
Why you gotta use the Bob's Burgers joke, though?
I can't help it. I don't know. I told you.
Guys, this is what you all signed up for when you wanted to go to a Bible study podcast with this crew. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you clicked the video.
Yeah.
I can't help you know.
Maybe they smell like ointment and pee.
No, our wonderful viewers at home and listeners at home do not smell like ointment and pee.
Right, just you. Okay.
Yeah. And presumably not Jesus, although this was 2,500 years ago. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, Jesus coaching success, Gatorade down the back.
Yeah, exactly. So that, first up, that's how I always see this passage.
Yeah.
Like I just like victory in Gatorade.
Yeah.
Jesus just
My
saying,
thirst quencher forever.
thank you for running with that.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. So like the interaction here, I gotta be honest, it is as confusing as hell to me.
Mhm.
Like this is one that has always bothered me. And like full disclosure, we're doing this recording before I've done all the research for the Bible study that this will inevitably be covered in. So I don't have a lot of stuff to hand on this one, but I have played with this one in the past before. And I'm going to start with the question that I pretty much try to get in the habit of opening with, which is,
I can imagine who's going to ask us.
and I'm knowing, at least from my own experience, because I have this, and if I've got a good chunk of experience in this, I know you've got to have even more. How have you seen this one abused in the past?
I tuned it out.
Well,
I shut out the toxic at some point. In this
yeah.
one.
At some point, you just got to shut it down. I didn't.
I know you didn't.
I got to experience every bit of toxicity. It's great. I can't dissociate like you can. Congratulations. One time it's helped you.
Super dissociation.
But-
mental
Yeah, right.
superpowers.
What's your superpower? Dissociating.
Just go with it. Just go
Okay,
with
then.
it. Just go with it.
But no, I mean, like, this is one I've heard a billion times is, you know, she came and she apparently out of nowhere just like runs into this house and just bam, ointment to the face. But no, I mean, it's used as give everything. Like you have this thing that's valuable, you know, it all should go to Jesus. And, you know, if you're not giving it to Jesus, you're not doing the right things with it. You know, they completely gloss over the whole, you know, giving it to the poor part. They don't even talk about that part of the verses, if we're real honest. It's just, you know, give everything. And if you're not giving everything, you're not giving enough. You better use your best stuff. And yeah, it's really used to just be, you know, what you give is never good enough. And
Yeah,
you
it
can
kind of
always
just
give
hammers
more.
in on the tithing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now we will pass around the offering plate.
Right? I am going
Looking at you, Olstein.
Never not. Never not.
We live looking at Osteen.
I was like, you know, I'm like a guy who's always in fear for his life because instead of having one eye open, I was going one eye trained on that ass. Always looking at you, man.
the memoirs of Pastor John Van Hanswerpen. Looking at you, Osteen.
That will be the title.
I love
But-
that.
You know, everything you just said is a level of toxic that needs to be talked about, and we will talk about it.
Mhm.
But before I knock that into the freaking bleachers like the T-ball setup it is, I got to ask you about verse 11. Because this is the one I've seen beaten up so much.
Mhm.
Um,
Do you want me to crack that, or did you have something you wanted to hit?
please feel free to crack that one first. Like as usual, because I grew up Protestant in the mainline Christianity, I got stuff to say about it, but it probably pales in comparison to what you've got in terms of toxicity.
So I'll read it again for the, you know, the effect. So, for you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. Let's just say, yeah, the poor are always there. You can deal with them later. You can deal with Jesus first. Only with Jesus first. You don't worry about the poor. They'll take care of themselves. Somebody will get to them. You worry about giving everything to Jesus. And and in lieu of Jesus, the church is here.
There it is. There it is. There it is. This is.
The question was always, but what about the poor? Who's doing something about that?
Looking at you, Osteen.
Still looking. Look, this one has I think been abused in mainline Christianity the same way it's been abused in evangelical Christianity. Basically, screw them poor people, let's give it to the church.
Yes.
Which, like, I don't think you have to be like a rocket scientist here. You don't have to be a rocket surgeon here to figure out that.
I wondered if you were gonna make that joke.
Give it a minute.
Yeah. You don't have to be a rocket surgeon or a heart scientist in order to figure out that this is the one line in the Bible where Jesus is saying, screw them poor people, and the entire rest of the Bible he's saying, no, take care of them poor people, then you're probably not reading it right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Crazy.
Like, he didn't just for one verse in the book of Matthew suddenly decide, you know what, actually, I actually don't like the poor.
Just kidding. They suck.
Yeah,
Screw that poor person in particular.
Boo you.
Yeah, that is not how Jesus is ever working. Like, not at all. Context. First off, context is important. Like,
what?
I know, right? Different iterations of this story across the Gospels. This, and then there's the anointing at the feet, which is arguably the same story. Like, they could be different stories, but like there's so many similarities that there's a case to be made for the same story. And in that one, the offer of, well, you should have just taken this, sold it for money, and given it to the poor. Who puts forth that argument in the hair on the feet version of the story? Do you remember?
Isn't that Peter?
No. I'll give you a hint. His last name rhymes with chariot.
Judas, right.
That's the one. And it goes on further to say in, I forget which gospel iteration of the story, that the reason he was saying it is because he held the communal purse strings and was regularly skimming off the top.
No,
that makes sense.
Like, immediately, Jesus saying, no, we're not going to sell this and give it to the poor Judas, suddenly takes a very different turn.
Freaking Judas.
Yeah. Like, Judas, priest man, Judas.
You broke him this time.
That one hurt. that one hurt me.
You're welcome.
At a deep molecular level.
It's what I'm here for. It's
glad it wasn't me that was
it was me
time.
for once. Put one up for my counter of how many times I've broken.
For anyone out there who has watched Dragon Ball Z Abridged, shout out to another one of my favorite YouTube channels.
That's for Tim.
I'm just imagining a Tim owned counter. Bing!
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so clearly this is not the thing, and like there is an undercurrent of screw you, Judas, that is happening in the context here as well. Also, let's consider that we are in Matthew 26.
Yeah, pretty far
We're
along.
not in Matthew 4 or 5. Where we are in the story of Jesus is important, because let's remember, Jesus knows where he is in the story pretty much all the time.
Right.
Okay. We're reading Matthew chapter 26 verses 6 through 13. 1 through 5 is entitled "The Plot to Kill Jesus."
Yeah.
Verse 14 starts out with Judas agrees to betray Jesus, followed by Passover, the Lord's Supper, the foretelling of Peter's denial. You see where we're going next, right?
Yeah. We're in the final arc of the saga here.
Yeah.
Final countdown.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever cooked a big meal and then saved the leftovers?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Totally.
Let me ask you this. Do you ever actually eat the leftovers?
Depends on what it is.
Yeah.
as a general rule.
As a general rule, no. It sits in the fridge until it gets mold on it, and then I have to throw it away and take the whole garbage bag with it.
Because you save the leftovers, you figure, hey, I'll take it to work with me tomorrow. And then you don't, because you never take it to work. You buy lunch while you're there. That's just your routine. Like, that's where you're going. You're never going to remember to do that because you don't do that. That's not a thing that's on your schedule.
Unless your husband packs your lunch every day.
Yeah, he packs my lunch when I go to work.
Well, not all of us have spouses who'll do that.
He's cute. We love him.
Squish.
In any case, before I get too far off topic, and you guys can squish later.
Not the terminology we were going with.
Anyway,
Stop.
anyway, in this situation, like, they're asking the question, what if you were to sell the money and give it to the poor? Okay, but in the next 48 hours, the disciples are going to be scattered. Jesus is going to be dead. And things are going to be pretty friggin' bleak. And after that, we're going to be the beginnings of a nascent church movement that's going to be fighting for its life. Are we going to have the ability to use those leftovers before they go bad, y'all? Or is that going to be money that just sits in someone's pocket and gets quietly reabsorbed if we were to sell it today? Assuming we had time to sell it today before we moved on to our dinner appointment, our reservation down the street. With the bread and the cup that brings Sean Connery back to life.
Right.
Indiana Jones reference for those keeping track.
Yeah.
So,
not too shabby, boy.
That was a remarkably good Sean Connery. Well done.
Yes. Don't encourage.
Encourage the man if I want to. Let's talk about Jesus.
Great.
Suck it,
Any conversation that devolved into Sean Connery impressions is an okay conversation in my book.
Anyway, if we devolve into Sean Connery impressions, I'm going to start making celebrity Jeopardy jokes, and that'll go off on a weird tangent. Anyway. So, like I said, the next section is Judas agrees to betray Jesus. The section after that is the Passover with the disciples. The section after that is anal bum cover, and then the institution of the Lord. Sorry, I couldn't. I had to slip it in.
The solid belly laugh you got off that one was impressive.
My favorite was trying not to laugh through it.
You thought I let it go. I did not. Anyway, in terms of sequence, those are leftovers they're not going to be able to use. Even if they were able to sell it and get the money in that situation, as a theoretical concept, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
As an actual practical matter of fact, no way. There isn't time. He points out here, by pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. And, he speaks obliquely about what's to come because that's how he do. But this is him pointing out, we're not on that track anymore. We've entered into the phase of the ministry where selling things and giving the money to the poor is still a good thing to do, but we also have to recognize that our ministry profile has currently changed. We are going for civil action and eventual execution by governing authorities. We have a different path before us.
Yeah.
We'll take the Dimmel road. Lord of the Rings, man, I'm killing it.
Yeah, he's knocking them off one by one.
Literally sitting right in front of me.
That's fair. That's fair.
Sorry, hang on. That one, actually.
Ah, yes. You gotta make sure you get the right one.
Exactly. I know my Tolkien. Don't get me wrong. I ain't no Stephen Colbert, but I know what I'm talking about. Anyway. So there is a recognition of practicality that's happening here that we don't often talk about. Just because we are called to help doesn't mean that all kinds of help are going to be within our power at all stages in the game.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many small churches, and there's one that I'm looking at right now that I'm not going to name, that thinks it's a big church but isn't, and is constantly trying to dump, as a lot of small churches do, a ridiculous amount of money into great charitable gifts to other organizations and like big fundraising events and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, you can't even, like, people in your community are starving and you're doing all of this other big church stuff because you're like, that's what a church does. No, that's what X type of church does. Your Y type of church. Like, you have moved into a different phase of mission. And recognizing that not everybody's going to be able to do the same things in the same way.
Right.
It's a huge part of being able to do this. We can't do all things at all times. Even Jesus couldn't do all things at all times.
Right. And he had the magic Jesus powers.
Yeah. Like, and sorry, abracajesus. Anyway,
to draw us back. I mean, isn't that the whole, body of Christ thing? Don't we all have different functions?
All right, if I can go back a minute, I should have said abracommunion because of what's coming next, and that just works better linguistically. But anyway, yeah, you're right. Like, it's the body of Christ thing. That's absolutely it. Like, different things at different times in different places of the ministry. And where Jesus is at right now, a different type of ministry is called for. That doesn't mean that caring for the poor is suddenly a bad thing. It just means that there are others who are equipped to do that, and we have something else that is higher on our priority list right now. And knowing how to refocus your priorities based on changing situations is what doing God's work in the world looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, this is him saying, look, the poor are still going to be here tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, go take care of them.
Right.
But if you try to keep that, if you try to hold on to that as your one thing, you will no longer be able to focus on the thing we need to do now.
Right.
And then none of the things will happen.
Yeah.
And this is a hard one, even for like the most well-intentioned Christians to grasp, is that, like, don't lose sight of the big picture. Don't lose sight of the fact that we're meant to do all of these good things. But if you become too unyielding and fixated on what you think the mission is supposed to be, then you stop being able to do the mission. Like, this is a theme that pops up throughout this period of Jesus's ministry, is the apostles, usually Peter, are like, but you told us that we have to do ministry in exactly this way, and we're doing it this way. And Jesus is like, no, like, that was when we were out wandering in the desert and, raising kids from the dead and telling Talitha to come and stuff like that. Like, that is a dirty joke that I'm going to scroll right past. Anyway, but like, that was then, this is now. That doesn't mean that this is a bad thing, but that does mean that we have to be aware of where we're at and what we're capable of and what our limitations are. Because the issue is not how do we help, the issue is how do we do the most good.
Right.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean do nothing. Like, you should still give all of yourself. Like, Dimmel Road joke notwithstanding, Jesus really did choose the harder path here.
Yeah.
But had he said, okay, well, let's burn this money and try to go feed the poor with it, the time investment of that, like, what would that have looked like practically from where they were? Okay, even if they managed to sell the thing and gather the money and go out and just like give it to poor people in the streets, how would that have worked? Like, he's got a night, maybe a day before he's expected at dinner.
Right.
Is he going to miss God's timing because he was so focused on what the ministry had been?
Yeah.
But he wasn't doing what the ministry was supposed to be now.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to change with what the ministry needs you to change with.
Yeah. And it's also important to recognize at this point too, Jesus is, and I know this will be a shock to some folk, Jewish.
What? Since when?
Since, I don't know, someone lopped the tip of his penis off.
Makes sense.
That did it.
That's probably, sounds about right.
Yeah. Am I Jewish? No, anyway.
I'm not either, and I have the same question.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Anywho, so like, he's Jewish, and Jesus is a Pharisee. He's a rabbi Pharisee of the Shammai school. And the Shammai school, no, sorry, he's not the Shammai school. He's the Hillel school. The Shammai were the other guys. And he's Hillel, and Hillel was big on selling all your stuff and giving it to the poor. So, and this is a point we often skip as Christians reading this chunk of the New Testament, is we assume that Jesus and his disciples and his small band of persecuted few were the only ones who even had the idea to sell what they had and give to the poor. Like, no, there was a huge chunk of the Jewish society that was on board with this philosophy.
And he was not the only one doing this at the time.
So, but he was, in this moment, the only one who could walk the crucifixion road.
Right.
Like the Via Dolorosa was in front of him, and there's only one dude who can walk that.
Mm-hmm.
So if he goes to do the thing that everyone else is doing, he misses the thing that only he can do.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is a story of situational discernment. Like, this is not saying, oh, screw them whores. Like, I want some pretty smells on my oily Josh head. I am literally the oiliest Josh.
Yeah, he was. The
oiliest Josh.
Like, that's not what's happening here, though. Like, this is a different thing. This is recognizing that you live in a temporal continuum and things change.
Right.
Which was probably a big deal for him, you know, coming from the whole God thing, living outside of it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, I have to walk through this like moment by moment. This is boring.
This sucks.
Yeah. I just imagine, like, you know, I had difficulty moving from school to school when I was in elementary school. I just imagine Jesus is like a 4-year-old looking at Joseph and going, but you exist here.
Right. And only here.
Yes. You exist here. And what does baseball have to do with it?
It brings up my favorite thing.
Space Nine.
It brings up my favorite thing of just, you ever think as a toddler or even as a teenager, Jesus ever looked at Joseph and went, "You're not my real dad"?
Well, have we noticed the fact that Joseph isn't around later on?
That's fair.
I have always said I need to know more about toddler Jesus.
Well, there are some non-canonical sources that give you some very creepy.
Non-canonical.
Like the infant. Yeah, you ever heard of the infancy gospel of Thomas?
No.
In which Jesus makes clay dragons and gives them the breath of life, and gets slightly bullied by a couple of kids, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusades them. Like, Ark of the Covenants them. Like,
so you're telling me Jesus is a Namekian because he can create dragons?
I'm not saying that.
Dragon Ball Z jokes. We got him.
Jesus comes from Namek. He makes Dragon Balls, and then he melts a bunch of kids because. Oh wait, hold on.
Sorry.
Child abuse. Hey, child abuse. Wait, that's why it's not in the gospel.
Right. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to get into a great breakdown of canon. There's a reason why some of these sources aren't considered canon. It's mostly because Jesus melting the faces off a bunch of toddlers doesn't exactly mesh with who we understand the Savior to be.
But I need toddler Jesus.
But sometimes,
you know, as a parent of toddlers,
yeah, right.
I get what you were going for.
Right, I get it.
But we can consider Jesus something of an exception to that. Now, admittedly, you know, later we get Jesus like doing exactly that to a fig tree just because he's hangry. But there's a big difference between, you know, nuking a fig tree because you're hangry and nuking a bunch of kids into dust because you're annoyed.
But given the ability, we would do both.
Our daughter literally hung up on us today because she was hangry. She goes, "Okay, bye."
It's true.
Yeah, hangry is a thing. Not gonna lie. And you know, hangry Jesus with miracle powers. I mean, this is the guy whose very first miracle was, "I am not drunk enough. None of us are drunk enough. Let's fix
more wine."
Like, let's make it some of the good stuff.
Yeah, right. Literally the point.
Reminds me of one of the first jokes I ever heard from a pastor, which should good pastor, which should tell you everything you need to know what kind of pastor they hung out with. And the joke was very simple. He said, "All right, Jesus walks into a bar, and he walks with the bartender. He goes, 2 waters, please." And the bartender goes, "God damn it, Jesus." You gotta pay like
Mine for
internet.
free.
I love that.
Anyway,
What do you need tonight? It's fine.
we've gotten wildly off track. Was there anything else we wanted to dig into on this one?
I wanted to hit a point that you made was like, if you don't move along with the point in your ministry that you find yourself, whether your ministry be, us, leading church kind of folk, or you have, your person who finds their calling in, going out and taking care of others, or in music, or wherever you find yourself.
Yeah.
But even within those niches, we'll call them, there are times where you got to switch focus.
Yeah.
And this came from an evangelical, viewpoint, but every once in a while, broken clock's right. It was, if we don't change, our ministry dies because we stop being effective, because we have to follow through with it.
Yeah. I mean, like, setting aside the vast contribution made by the political arm of the Republican Party, there is a practical / cynical reason why the evangelical parasite has grown as well as it has. Like, it understands what you need to do in order to grow, as any good cancer does. And there is, I believe, in all things, something that can be learned.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far, like, it's a bit overwrought at this point, but even Adolf Hitler knew that smoking was bad.
Yeah.
Everything, even the worst of things, has within it some nugget of goodness. And that is honestly because in all of us, we carry the imago Dei, the image of God.
Right.
But no matter how much we've given in to sinfulness, that's still there. And that's going to create some goodness in what we're doing.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
So, like, if there, admittedly, in my experience from the outside, the evangelical church seems very resistant to change. But then again, I'm from mainline Christianity. I'm hardly one to talk. But my experience with both groups has been they're both equally resistant to change. They've just, latched on to different musical instruments to be resistant to change about.
In my understanding of where evangelical Christianity, because again, coming from that end, where they will change is what do we need to change to now, and I'm going to use the word indoctrinate because that's really what it is,
more or less,
as you do with, you will be assimilated, resistance is futile. There we got, we got the Star Trek one in there.
Thank you.
But I mean, it's how do we make sure that we can continue to assimilate these people, to, for lack of a better term, brainwash them into making sure they think the way we think.
Yeah.
What do we have to change to do that? But everything else needs to remain the same because that keeps the structure together.
What other glass walls can I put up?
Yep.
Yeah. And, it's weird because the daily devotional I just did last night was all about being patient and waiting. But change is important too. And knowing when to do one over the other is a huge part of the discernment process too.
Yeah.
And why you're doing it is important.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, are you changing because you want to attract more people? Are you changing because you think that God is calling you to be more hip with the youngins, so I'm going to wear my flannel shirt and ride a skateboard? Yeah.
It's hard to break my neck.
Accurate.
I'm not going to talk about the goateed skateboard riding youth pastors here because, well, I've seen too many of them and may or may not have been one at one point. But
call out.
that is what it is. But yeah, it's a tough one because we do want to be able to contextualize ourselves appropriate, to know when to follow the mission at hand. But also, it has to be because it's God's mission and not because it's what we want to do. In the devotion I was talking about last night, I talked about the frivolity of change. Like, how many of us have gotten into a church, really helped build up a new program, and then it went to day one, and then it wasn't a perfect launch. And then the people come back and they're like, okay, we have to scrap this because clearly it's not working.
Yep.
like, no, you need to take time to make sure that the things you're doing work and to change them and to adapt them. And as you learn more and understand more, you need to be patient and adaptive. But at the same time, you also can't do what so many of us have done too, which is just we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again forever. We're going to keep selling things and giving them to the poor because Jesus said that, 3 years ago when we started this ministry, and that's what Jesus said. So we're going to keep doing it. No, you have to listen to Jesus. He says, okay, now do this thing. And so discernment is the key word here, like knowing when to do this. And this verse, to bring it back to it, is Jesus demonstrating a degree of discernment, saying, no, not now. Like, even the best and most important of things, like selling your possessions and feeding the poor, there are going to be times, like if you do that every second of your life, you're going to run out of an ability to sell your possessions and feed the poor right about the minute you run out of possessions. And then you're going to be poor. And the net result will be that you will have maybe gained one less poor person, but you'll have gained one more poor person. So in the net, like, balance of things, you will have actually accomplished nothing.
Net zero.
Right.
So the goal is equalization, not disbalance.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes that means stepping back a minute. But that also doesn't mean like giving into terrible ideologies like, well, if you just give poor people stuff, then they'll never learn how to not be poor, which is not right either.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
we could do an entire, and this is me trying not to do a whole other video on that branch of ideology, because we could do another series on that one. And knowing us, we probably will someday. But
sure.
Yeah, 100%.
For now, the lesson from this one to me has always been discernment. Like, know when to take up the cause, and know when to set it down and focus on another part.
Right.
Yeah. Discernment's always been a huge part of what we preach, I guess, for lack of a better term, is, sometimes something's right, that is a good thing, and then sometimes it's just not the best course of action.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or not. Yeah.
Ultimately, it's the same calculus that wound up with me and my wife serving out here in Japan. Because we had a choice between coming out here to serve in Japan as an international, multilingual pastor, clergy couple, or to stay and serve a kind of a bog standard white Protestant church in America. And we had good offers from churches we loved. Like, we were actually I was actually serving as the contract pastor for a church in New Jersey that I absolutely loved. My wife was serving as an associate at a church she absolutely loved. Like, we had good posts, and they were going to make us full time. It was a good setup. Like, it wasn't a bad place, and we had the option to come out here to a much riskier, much more dangerous, much more unstable situation. We chose this for the same calculus I think that Jesus is using here. Of the options before me, one of these I can do. One of these anybody can do.
Right.
For me, like, I had a church I loved, but any old white male pastor out of New Jersey could have done that.
Right.
Some better, some worse, but you're not going to have a shortage of trained seminary pastors in the 50-mile orbit around Princeton and New Brunswick theological seminaries.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
Weird.
There's two major seminaries within 25 miles of each other. It's probably not going to be hard to find someone to preach.
Right.
On the other hand, our qualifications were much better suited to this environment here, and there aren't a lot of people who have what we have to bring to that. So that was our calculus. And I think Jesus is doing the same thing here. He's saying, look, I got a choice between feeding a few more hungry people, taking this money and feeding a few more homeless people, or walking the Via Dolorosa. Only one of these I can do.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, this one's only me. This one is like, when I'm done with my very carefully positioned way of showing off my mysteriously jacked abs, when I'm done with that, y'all can still sell perfume and give money to the poor. Like,
Right.
It'll always be there.
Yeah, the poor will always be there. My crucifixion will not stop you from being able to continue the work.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But I got to go do this thing now, because despite what certain sects of Chinese and Japanese society might have you believe, Jesus didn't have a brother to swap places with him so he could go off, change his name to Hong, and live in the Chinese countryside for the rest of his life.
I would still love that story. It's fantastic.
I know.
Yep. One of the most deep cut Family Guy jokes I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
You know the one I'm referring to?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The moment where Stewie comes back from the dead and says, I met Jesus, and he said his name was Hong. Huh, go figure. Yeah, no, that's actually representing an actual religious thing. Anyway, anything else we want to dig in, or do we want to call it for tonight?
No, I think
we're good.
I think we've hit everything, and I just kind of was one thing is just stewing in my mind, and it's gonna feel like just a rehash of something we've said, but I've got this need to get it out. Sometimes we just have to change our emphasis on the same sentence. And I know that doesn't make sense yet, but it will. And you're looking at all these options that you have within, you're trying to help. And it's where can I be effective? And you put the emphasis on where. And it's like, okay, there's all these options. Where can I be effective? Where we need to sometimes take a step back and put the emphasis on I. Where can I be effective? Who I am, what I offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Stop trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
Just because you can shove it in there doesn't mean that that's where it goes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know,
Yeah.
I understand, but that's not what I meant. And
Yeah,
you
you're
know
the
it.
broken one this time.
If you
You
hadn't
had to
tried,
end your theology there.
I love that. It's beautiful.
No
everybody
comment.
knows what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Yep. Got it.
Stop trying to make yourself into something you're not. How about that?
There you go.
Okay, we'll go with it.
Anyway,
All right.
that was my last word there. So
I think we're good for tonight. For next week, we are going to try to continue keeping these in sync with our Wednesday night / Thursday morning, if you're in Japan, Bible study. Links to all this stuff are going to be, of course, down in the description.
yeah, come hang out.
Yeah, come hang out. The easiest way to get any of this stuff is to either hit up either the Unfinished Community website. I actually haven't checked your website. I don't know if you put any of these links up.
We have a link to.
I don't know. You're the last one that was on.
I believe we put a link to your website. I'll have to double check that. It's either the website or the Discord. I'm not sure which one.
Well, check the Unfinished website where all the stuff is at.
Yes, go to Unfinished. If you want to find out more about us specifically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
you
you
can
find more
see-
about Unfailing Love specifically, then go there because they have the stuff what is for them. But
we have to update.
I'm probably gonna do that after we're done.
yeah, I think I updated last week. so
11
there should be
o'clock
new
now.
stuff up there. But yeah, if you want to know more about this Bible study, anybody's welcome. This is actually being hosted on the Discord server for First Reformed Church in New Brunswick, who are the ones who are kind of central to this particular study. But it is open to anybody. So if this is something you want to get in on, we have already discussed, by the time this has come out, we will have already discussed this verse.
Mm-hmm.
So these videos are kind of following up on that. But
Yeah.
be a fresh new one next week.
We'll all be there.
Yeah, we'll all be there with bells on for some reason because that's the thing people do.
Yeah, it's never been one that made sense.
I
to
have
me.
a necklace with bells on it.
You do.
They never
You
said
do, Jeremy.
they never said bells on what. And as I may have mentioned, you only get from about chest down on here.
Giant fan.
You're gonna get this
Giant
removed
fan.
from YouTube is what's gonna happen.
In any
There
case,
you go.
like, share, subscribe, pass the
Yes.
sucker around if you find it interesting, amusing, and or wildly irreverent and want to muster the hordes to have us all like attacked in public or
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Go
sure.
for it.
yeah.
Get in line.
In the misery.
Unless you're linguistically really, really good, there's no way you're gonna be able to swap me because I live in Japan. Have fun with that.
Great.
Yeah. So, have a great week. Join us at the Bible study. Pop on the Discord server, or just read your Bible from time to time and realize that God doesn't actually hate you and or anybody.
Yeah,
It's true. Love you guys.
I love
Have
you.
a good week. Bye.